Hello everyone, Mr. Schultz here for in grade 2. We're going to be talking about 4.6 or Applying Trigonometry. Make sure that you put your first and last name as well as your period number. So once again, we are dealing with Applying Trigonometry. Understanding that we're doing so, ka, toa. A. Toa. Remember, SOHCAHTOA. So once again, we're dealing with indirect measurement. Finding the measurement of an object without measuring it. So we did this previously when we had similar triangles. And we're like, all right, it's a scale factor of 2. And we're like, all right, if this is 2 and this is 4, and this now is 4, what's this? And we're like, oh, it's 8. And that was one way. Another way we're going to learn is using trigonometric functions or trigonometric functions. So let's continue. So we're going to find the angle of elevation. So when we talk about the angle of elevation, that's formed by a horizontal line and an observer's line. So here's this dude, he's like, I'm looking. And it's observer's line of sight to an object above the land. So we have, like, let's say this little star right there. So we're going to have to figure out what is this angle. This is x degrees. And we can figure out, all right, we know how much this is. So let's say this is a number. Let's say this is like A, and this is B. Like you could figure out using TOA, tangent. And we can figure out what is this angle right here. Or we could figure out what is this height from using the inverse tangent. Now, the angle of depression is going to be formed by a horizontal line and an observer's line of sight to an object below the line. So we're going to see that with this. Like, let's say we are in a building, and we're like, all right, we have a dude right here, and he's looking down. So basically, and he's like, hey, I'm looking at this right here. So basically, right here, we can pretend that there are two parallel lines right here. And if we're like, hey, look, this is decreasing by, let's say it's 40 degrees. Well then, using the alternate interior angles, when a transversal cuts through two parallel lines, then alternate interior angles are congruent. And we could be like, hey, look, this is going to be 40 degrees here. So this is the angle of depression. All right, let's continue. So we need to remember the 3 trig functions. And the 3 trig functions are going to be the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. And so that's the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent is going to be TOA, the opposite over the adjacent. So basically, if we're like, all right, the sine of this angle is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, we can figure out this by doing depending on what are we trying to figure out. If we're trying to find the angle, we do the inverse sine of this fraction right here. If we're doing it for the cosine, we do the inverse cosine. And finally, the inverse tangent. All right, that's just a little review. Let's go on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so if you are struggling with any of these, please put a little star next to it. And I will try to explain at least one of these to you in class or when you turn it in on our learning management system. So, example 1, lighthouses. Sailors on the ships spot the light from a lighthouse at an angle of 25 degrees. So angle of elevation. All right, so this right here is 25 degrees. And they know that it's 30 meters above the sea level. How far from the shore is the ship? All right, well, what we have to figure out is, okay, we want the opposite over the adjacent. Okay, so which one is the opposite over the adjacent? Well, that's the tangent. So I write out the formula. The tangent of 25 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is 30 meters, over the adjacent, which I don't know. Let's call it x. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by x. I'm going to get x by itself. And so if there's anything on the bottom, I'm going to get him out of there because I don't want him in the denominator. So I rewrite it. I got x times the tangent of 25 degrees is equal to 30 meters. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my handy-dandy calculator and I'm going to calculate it. So let's pull it out. All right, so I got my calculator. Now, the first thing I want to do is make sure I'm in degrees. So I'm going to change it to, go down, change it to degrees. And now, everything should work out. I'm going to find the tangent of 25. And I get that. So now I can divide 30 by that. Or, in my calculator, I know I can do 30 divided by, and I can do parentheses, tangent of 25. And I end the parentheses. And I check, and it says 64.335. So now I'm going to divide by the tangent of 35 degrees. And then, 25 degrees. And then I'm going to just use my calculator is right there. I'm going to say x is equal to, I'm going to bring it back right now. All right, so it says, round your answer to the nearest meter. So even if I round this up, I'm like, all right, this becomes 4, and I try to round this up, it's not going to work, so I'm going to go down because it says the nearest meter. So now, the ship is blank meters from the shore. I was about to say cliff. Well, we already got the answer. It's going to be 64 meters from the shore. All right, guys, let's do one more. The student can see a water tower. So at this moment, we're going to need to draw it. So you can see a water tower from the edge of the soccer field. So here's dude right here, and he's looking up. The edge of the field is 110 meters, all right, 110 feet. From the water tower. All right, here's water tower. Hey, I'm a water tower. So water tower, looks like a tree. And it stands 32, okay, so 32.5 feet. What is the angle of elevation? If the eye level, the eye level is 6 feet off the ground. All right, so this changes things a little bit. So I know I'm 6 feet off the ground. And so he's like, hey, what's the angle of the elevation? So he's going to look at that. So hold up. All right, so let me set it up. Now this part right here, if he's 6 feet tall, then I'm going to subtract 6 feet from 32.5. So I should get 26.5. So the new height equals 26.5 feet. So they want to know, what is this elevation? So opposite over adjacent. Looks like it's another tangent problem. So the tangent of an angle is equal to the opposite, 26.5, over the adjacent, 110 feet. So now I can just cancel some things out. And now I can actually figure out what this is. So let's bring out my handy dandy calculator again. Alright guys, so I'm going to find the tangent. Oh wait, I'm going to do the opposite because I want to get rid of this tangent. The opposite of tangent, or the inverse operation, is the inverse tangent. So I'm going to find the inverse of 26.5 divided by 110. And then that will give me, what is my angle? And it says round my answer to the nearest tenth. So if I round this up, that becomes a 5, round up, that becomes a 5, round up 13.6. Make sure you round a couple away and just check, because you might think, oh, this 4 doesn't round up. But if you go past it, it will go round up. So 13.6. But wait, it's not 13.6. So the angle is equal to 13.6 degrees. So let's separate this out. The angle of elevation from the student's eye level is blank degrees. Now, if we put the word degrees, we don't need to put the little symbol, but to each his own. If you want to put the little symbol, take off the word. If you don't, take off the symbol. Alright, go ahead and do number 3. For homework, we're going to continue on. We have one more page and we are done with part 1. So now we're going to talk about the angle of depression. So with an angle of depression, so we see this. It says, hey, she is standing on the roof of a building that's 80 feet tall. All right, that is 80 feet tall. She's 5.5 feet tall. She spots a fountain on the ground, and she knows it's 122 feet away. What is the measure of the angle of the depression formed by Lucia's horizontal line of sight and her line of sight to the fountain? Okay, well, I would add these two numbers. So now I know this is really not, instead of 80, it's 85.5. And now what I want is I can figure out, all right, her angle of depression is right there. So that means alternate interior angles, I want this. And this is going to be the opposite over the adjacent. So that's the tangent, the opposite over the adjacent. So now on this one, I know that my tangent of the degrees will equal the opposite, which is 85.5 over 122. And technically it's feet and feet, but when I divide out, they go away and they say goodbye. All right, so let's get our handy dandy calculator and figure it out. All right, so dealing with this, I'm going to want to get rid of this tangent, and the inverse operation of tangent is going to be the inverse tangent. And so I know I'm like 85.5, I want to divide that by 122, and that's going to give me how many degrees is it? And remember, it's asking for the nearest degree. So it looks like the angle of depression is 35. So now I'm going to type it out. The angle of depression is blank. So let's write it out now. 35 degrees. Alright, I left you with 1 angle of elevation, and I'm leaving you with 3 angle of depression because it's very important. Now, I'll be walking around to help you out with example 2. But good luck, guys. I'll see you in class. Remember, go ahead and put a star on 1 or 2 problems, and I'll try to help you on that in class or through our learning management system. Bye, guys. Have a good one.